The millionaire's daughter was not deaf. The nanny uncovered the truth that made her father cry. The autumn mornings in Ohio often carried a pale gray sky, and that very color seemed to settle over the old farmhouse where Daniel Miller lived with his young daughter. The house, once designed to hold laughter and music, now stood heavy with silence. Every room echoed with memories untouchable, as if the past remained alive there, but the present was hollow. Daniel had once been a successful architect in Cleveland. But 5 years ago, a car accident took the life of his wife, Rachel, and turned his existence into a long chain of lonely days. He abandoned his career, retreating to his family's farmhouse to raise his daughter, Isabella, affectionately called Bella. To outsiders, he might have seemed fortunate for still having his child by his side. In truth, Bella's silence only deepened the emptiness. Her mother's death led Bella to turn away from the world's voices, surrendering to a realm of silence. Doctors said she would never hear, never speak. Daniel tried to accept this. Bella grew like a small shadow within the house. She did not speak, did not smile, did not cry. She simply clutched her worn doll and stared out the window for hours. People often say that time heals all wounds, but for Daniel Miller, time only carved his wounds deeper. Each day in the old Ohio farmhouse unfolded like a loop, waking up, preparing breakfast, sitting across from his daughter, speaking into silence, and ending the day in empty rooms. Daniel had once lived by the fast pace of Cleveland, spending hours bent over architectural drawings where every wall and every line breathed creativity. Now that life was only a distant memory. His large house was no longer a place for design and dreams. It had become a closed space where he clung to the fragments of a family already lost. Bella, his 8-year-old daughter, was the center of his remaining efforts. Yet her silence made every attempt feel hopeless. In the mornings, when Daniel sat beside Bella and told fairy tales or memories of her mother, her eyes remained vacant, as if the words passed straight through without leaving a mark. Sometimes he sketched clumsy drawings on paper, trying to turn his stories into images that might draw her in. But Bella would only blink softly, then turn back to hold her worn doll tightly. There were times when Daniel sat for hours simply watching her face. He searched for a spark, a sign, any movement to prove she was still connected to this world. But Bella rarely reacted. She seemed to live behind a thick, invisible glass, cut off from sound, voice, and the love he desperately tried to pour into her. The weariness grew heavier with each day. Daniel was not angry, but his heart was exhausted. He often wondered whether he was doing the right thing, or merely filling the hollow inside himself with fragile hope. Every evening, after tucking Bella into bed, pulling the blanket over her, and whispering one last story, he left her room with a heart weighed down. The house itself magnified his loneliness. In the living room, the family portrait still hung, him, Rachel, and Bella, as a baby. Each time his eyes met that picture, it felt like a needle piercing his chest. He missed Rachel, missed the way she believed Bella would surprise them someday. But Rachel was gone, and that belief seemed to have vanished with her. On weekends, Daniel led Bella around the farm. He pointed out the tall corn stalks, the sparrows darting overhead, and the sky shifting towards dusk. He spoke of everything as though Bella could hear, but she trailed behind, silent like a shadow. Sometimes Daniel stopped, turned back, and made simple gestures, pointing at a flower, drawing a circle in the air. Bella seldom responded, yet he continued, holding on to the habit he could not let go. At night, Daniel sat in his old study, staring at the yellowed blueprints he once drew. That was when he had been building for others, creating spaces to hold life. Now, the structure he longed most to design was a bridge, one that could span between two worlds, sound and silence. Yet, with each passing day, that dream seemed to recede further away. Daniel never blamed Bella. He had never thought his daughter guilty for her silence. On the contrary, he pitied her, imagining she was trapped somewhere, calling out in ways no one could hear. That thought alone kept him moving forward, that if he remained patient, if he kept loving enough, perhaps one day Bella would answer. It was the only fragile hope Daniel clung to. The day Clara Johnson arrived at the Miller farm was unremarkable. It was just a misty morning with Daniel tidying up the porch when a soft knock echoed at the door. Standing before him was a woman in her 40s, simply dressed, wearing an old coat, holding a small bag. "Hello," she said in a low but gentle voice. "My name is Clara. I heard you might need help around the house." Daniel hesitated. He had posted a brief notice in the local paper weeks ago, but never expected anyone to truly come. Several people had tried working here, but few could endure the suffocating silence of the house. Clara was different. She did not force a smile or chatter to impress. She simply stood there, quiet, her gaze steady, but unstrained. Daniel let her inside, offering a seat in the living room. Their conversation was minimal, circling only around chores, cooking, cleaning, keeping the unused rooms in order. Daniel watched, waiting for some curious question, but Clara only nodded. She did not mention Bella, did not ask why the house felt so empty. Something in the way she respected the silence caught his attention. In truth, Clara carried her own wound. She had once been a nurse at a small hospital, but after losing her newborn son to complications during a difficult delivery, she left the profession. Since then, she carried a grief too deep for words, searching for a quiet refuge. When she saw the notice for house help, she felt this was the place she needed. That first night, in the small back room given to her, Clara unpacked her worn suitcase. Inside were only a few clothes, some personal items, and a photograph of a baby boy, the child she had lost. She placed the picture in the bedside drawer, not to hide it, but to keep it close. The silence of the house did not unsettle Clara. On the contrary, it felt familiar. She was used to silence, having lived within it herself for months. Walking down the hallway, touching the wooden walls, Clara sensed clearly. This was a place where time had stopped, waiting for someone to bring warmth back. The next morning, Daniel handed her a simple list of tasks. Clara nodded, offering no objection, asking for nothing. As she passed the upstairs hall, she noticed a door left slightly ajar. Inside, a little girl sat against the wall, clutching a doll, her eyes fixed somewhere far away. Clara paused for a few seconds. She did not step in, did not call out. She only observed, then quietly closed the door. In that moment, Clara knew. This child carried a silence that mirrored her own loss. And that was the very thing that would change everything. In the first days, Clara worked quietly. She cleaned the kitchen, swept the halls, washed the bed linens. She played no music, made no unnecessary noise. The house was already silent, and Clara allowed it to remain so. This surprised Daniel. Others before her had tried to break the silence with chatter or a radio, but Clara did not. She seemed to understand that this house could only bear stillness. Bella slowly grew used to the woman's presence. Clara did not intrude, did not ask questions, did not try to make her laugh. Instead, she offered a gentle greeting each time she passed by, then returned to her chores. Sometimes Bella glanced at her, sometimes not. Clara never pressed, but little by little, Clara began noticing details that Daniel seemed too accustomed to see. One afternoon, when she accidentally dropped a wooden spoon on the floor, Bella startled. It was a tiny movement, the shoulders twitching, the eyes flickering. Clara froze, heart racing, and silently stored the moment in her mind. From then on, she watched more closely. When her footsteps pressed heavier against the wooden floor, Bella tilted her head slightly, as if catching something. When Clara swept the hallway, the faint rasp of bristles against the boards made Bella blink faster than usual. No one else noticed, but Clara did. She did not rush to conclusions. She did not tell Daniel. Instead, she quietly adjusted her work, walking slower near Bella, changing the rhythm of her steps, setting objects down with different sounds. Each time she saw the subtlest reactions, enough to plant a fragile but growing conviction within her. Beyond that, Clara began leaving small tokens of care around Bella. A folded blanket on the chair where she often sat, a picture book opened on the table, a warm cup of water set near the window. Bella never spoke of them, but Clara noticed her eyes sometimes lingered a little longer, as if acknowledging her presence. To Daniel, nothing seemed different. He still believed Bella was entirely cut off, that silence was absolute. But to Clara, those delicate responses were whispers from another world. The more she observed, the more certain she became that Bella's truth had never been fully understood. In those moments, Clara did not see just a child trapped in silence. She saw herself, a woman who had once lost a small voice forever. That recognition stirred her determination. She would keep watching, keep waiting, until she found the key that could open the door between Bella and the world. One winter afternoon, while cleaning a little-used sitting room, Clara found a small box inside an old drawer. Within it lay a pair of wireless headphones, dusty but intact. She held them in her hands, hesitating. A strange thought echoed in her mind. Music? That night, after finishing her chores, Clara sat in her small room and opened her phone. She chose an instrumental piece, a slow, tender piano melody. She tested the old headphones, surprised to find they still worked. Clara had no concrete plan. She simply felt that music might become a bridge. The next day, passing by Bella's room, she saw the girl in her usual corner, clutching her doll, eyes distant. Clara walked closer, sitting a few steps away, careful not to startle her. She lifted the headphones gently, whispering softly, "Bella, I want to let you hear something small, all right?" There was no response, but Bella's eyes flickered toward her for an instant. That alone was enough for Clara to continue. She placed the headphones lightly against the girl's right ear and pressed play. At first, Bella remained motionless. Then, after a few seconds, her eyelids trembled. Her head tilted slightly, her lips parted, as if straining to catch something far away. Clara nearly stopped breathing, and then she saw what Daniel had never seen, a true change in Bella's expression. Her eyes were no longer entirely vacant. There was something like attention, something like connection. Clara spoke no words. She only sat beside her, letting the music flow. A minute passed before Bella blinked, then whispered, hoarse and fragile, "Mommy." Clara's heart froze. It was the first time she had ever heard Bella's voice, fragile, trembling, but real. Her eyes blurred with tears, yet she held them back. She would not let this moment slip away. From that day forward, Clara repeated the experiment. Sometimes it was piano, sometimes the sounds of nature, birds, rain. Each time Bella responded in small but certain ways. A tilted head, widened eyes, sometimes even the faintest upward curve of her lips. Clara knew this was no illusion. One evening, as Clara sat with Bella in her room, Daniel entered. He saw the headphones on his daughter's ears, Clara seated close. His face darkened instantly. "What are you doing?" Daniel snapped. "She can't hear. Don't give her false hope." Bella startled, clutching her doll tightly. Clara tried to explain, but Daniel was too angry. He stepped forward, reaching to snatch the headphones away. That was when the unthinkable happened. Bella dropped the doll, rushed into Clara's arms, and pressed her face against her. Then, in a trembling but clear voice, Bella said, "I heard it." The room fell silent. Daniel froze, eyes wide in disbelief. Clara wrapped her arms around Bella, her heart racing. The girl repeated, louder this time, "I heard it." Those simple words shattered the wall that had enclosed the house for years. Daniel sank onto a chair, covering his face with his hands. When he looked up, his eyes glistened red. He whispered, She really spoke?" Clara nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Bella hears, not like us, but she hears." From that moment, everything changed. The silence still lingered in the house, but it was no longer absolute. It had been pierced by music, by a fragile whisper, and that was the beginning of a new journey. Since the day Bella spoke her first words, the farmhouse seemed to breathe a new warmth. It was still the same old house in Ohio, with its long, dusty halls, yet it no longer felt lifeless. Daniel smiled more often, sometimes for nothing more than watching his daughter blink to the rhythm of music. Clara's steps grew lighter, her heart less burdened, as she witnessed the girl slowly opening. Afternoons often found the three of them sitting on the porch. Clara would bring a small speaker, playing soft melodies. Bella sat in the middle, wide eyes glimmering, her hands tapping her knees in rhythm. Sometimes she tilted her head, humming faint, uncertain sounds. To Daniel, every small gesture was a miracle. The joy seemed fragile, yet it spread everywhere. The house, once cloaked in silence, now carried hurried footsteps, quiet laughter, and Bella's hesitant hums. Then came a stormy night. Wind howled across the fields, thunder cracked the sky. Daniel was securing a window when a sharp scream tore from Bella's room. He rushed toward the hall, but Clara was faster, flinging the door open. Bella crouched in the corner of her bed, clutching her doll, tears streaming. When she saw Clara, she ran into her arms, clinging tightly, sobbing, "I'm scared. I'm so scared." "Oh." Clara sank to the floor, holding Bella close, stroking her back. "It's all right, Bella. I'm here. You're safe." Her cries blended with the rain pounding on the roof. Daniel stood frozen at the doorway, his hand gripping the frame. His heart clenched at the sound, the very voice he had longed for, now spilling out with raw pain. At last, the sobs softened. Bella lifted her tear-streaked face and whispered, "I'm scared." Clara brushed the damp hair from her forehead, asking gently, "What are you afraid of, Bella?" Bella bit her lip, eyes cast down, then spoke slowly, each word trembling. "It's not that I can't hear. I'm just afraid of that sound, the sound that took my mother away." The words fell into the room like shattered glass. For a long moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Clara's breath caught, tears spilling. She pulled Bella tighter, her voice unsteady. "Oh, Bella, I understand. You never lost your hearing. You just carried too much pain to listen again. You bore a fear far too heavy for someone your age." Bella buried her face in Clara's shoulder, her small body trembling. Clara whispered, "I was afraid once too, Bella. I lost my baby, and for the longest time, I didn't want to hear anything either. Every sound reminded me of the silence he left behind. But then I realized if I stayed in silence, that loss would steal the rest of my life. I don't want that for you." Bella lifted her head, eyes red and swollen, gazing at Clara. "Were you sad a lot?" Clara smiled through her tears. "Yes, but you helped me hear again. Hear joy, hear laughter, hear courage. You don't have to be strong all at once, Bella. Just a little at a time. We'll hear the world again together." Daniel remained at the doorway. Their words cut like a blade into his heart, yet also healed him. Tears streamed freely as he stepped inside, moving slowly toward them. Bella startled when she saw him, her eyes anxious. But Daniel knelt down, wrapping his arms around them both. His voice cracked. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. From now on, we'll always be here, me and Clara. Nothing can take you away from us again." In that embrace, 3 souls, each carrying their own grief, for the first time felt they were standing together on common ground, a place where tears flowed, but hope lived too. The morning after the storm, the sky was startlingly clear. Sunlight filtered through the damp clouds, casting a golden glow across the wide yard in front of the porch. Daniel sat in his familiar wooden chair, a cup of tea in his hand, his eyes drifting toward the misty fields. The night before still lingered within him, Bella's cries, her fragile confession, and the embrace the three of them had shared. Soft footsteps echoed on the porch boards. Bella walked slowly toward him, her bare feet brushing against the wood. Without a word, she climbed onto his lap, curling against him like a small cat basking in the sun. Daniel started slightly, then closed his arms around her tiny frame, a feeling both strange and achingly familiar. They sat in silence for a long while. Then Bella lifted her face, her voice no louder than a breeze. "I'm sorry, Daddy, for being silent for so long." Daniel froze, his hand trembling. He looked down at his daughter, eyes glistening. "Bella, you don't have to apologize, not one bit. You carried pain no child should ever carry. You owe me nothing." Bella bit her lip, tears gathering. "But I left you alone. I saw you talking by yourself, telling me stories I never answered. I was afraid you thought I didn't need you anymore." Daniel held her close, his voice breaking. "Oh, Bella, every day all I wanted was for you to know I was here, whether you spoke or not. You never made me feel unneeded. You were the reason I kept breathing, the reason I kept going." Bella rested her head against his chest, whispering through a trembling voice. "I miss Mom so much, and I was scared that if I heard sounds, I'd remember the day she left. So I hid, in silence." Daniel drew in a sharp breath, tears falling into her hair. He whispered, "I miss her too, with every part of me. But if she were here, what would she want? She'd want you to hear, to laugh, to live fully. Your silence doesn't keep her memory alive. It only keeps you from the joy she dreamed for you." Bella looked up at him, whispering, "Really, Daddy?" Daniel nodded, his smile wet but tender. "Really? Your mom always believed one day you'd make the world listen. And today, when I heard your voice, I knew she was smiling from above." They sat together, the only sound the rustle of wind over the fields. Daniel tightened his embrace, murmuring, "No silence will ever stand between us again, Bella. From now on, we'll hear the world together. Every sound, every laugh, every tear. You don't have to carry your fear alone anymore." Bella closed her tear-stained eyes, resting her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, both father and daughter felt the walls between them dissolve, leaving an open space where they could truly hear each other. Time passed, and the Miller farm was no longer the bleak place it once was. Since the day Bella first spoke, everything had begun to change. Daniel smiled more often now, his face no longer etched only with sorrow, but softened with hope. Clara had become an irreplaceable part of their daily life, preparing meals, keeping the house in order, but above all, offering her gentle presence. Bella blossomed. She no longer sat for hours at the window in silence. Instead, she ran across the yard, laughing as she chased butterflies, or sat on the porch listening to the music Clara played. The once cold house now echoed with warmth, the sound of piano, the ripple of laughter, the murmur of quiet conversations. Many times Daniel stood still in the hallway, listening to his daughter's laughter, realizing the house had come alive again. And Clara was the one who had lit that flame. One late summer afternoon, the three of them went out to the meadow behind the house. The sky was clear, the breeze carried the scent of hay. Bella sat in the middle, twirling wildflowers in her hands. Daniel lay back in the grass, while Clara sat nearby with an unopened book in her lap. Suddenly, Bella turned to Clara, her eyes shining. "Miss Clara, can I call you Mom?" Clara froze, the book nearly slipping from her hands. Her heart pounded, her voice trembling. "Bella, are you sure? Why do you want to call me that?" Bella sat upright, gripping a small flower tightly, then spoke slowly, clearly. "Because I can feel the love you give me. It's like the love my mom gave me." Clara could no longer hold back her tears. She wrapped her arms around Bella, her voice breaking. "Thank you, Bella. You've given me the greatest gift of my life." Bella smiled, resting her head on Clara's shoulder as though she had finally found the motherly embrace she had lost. Not far away, Daniel watched. His heart swelled with emotions he had long buried. He had once feared no one could ever fill the void in their family. But now, watching his daughter willingly call Clara Mom, he understood. Clara was not just someone who had come to help. She had become family, a pillar for both of them. Daniel rose, walking closer, his eyes gentle. He placed a hand on Clara's shoulder, meeting her tear-filled eyes. "Clara, Bella is right. The love you've given her, no one could deny it. And I've realized I need you in my life, more than I ever dared to admit." Clara lowered her head, tears streaming but a smile curving her lips. Bella looked up at the two of them, her eyes shimmering with hope. In that moment, in the wide meadow, three souls, once marked by loss, had found each other. From the day Bella called Clara Mom, Daniel's heart had truly changed. He realized he had not only found a partner in caring for his daughter, but also a woman who could warm the heart he thought had frozen since his wife's passing. Every time he saw Bella smiling in Clara's arms, laughter replacing silence, he felt the ache of loss slowly giving way to something new. Thoughts of the future, of a whole home, began to stir within him. One evening, after Bella had gone to bed, Daniel sat with her in her room. He whispered, "Bella, do you love Clara?" Bella nodded instantly, eyes sparkling. "I love Mom so much. She makes me feel safe, and I want her to stay forever." Daniel smiled softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then, if I asked you to help me plan a surprise for her, would you?" Bella tilted her head eagerly. "What kind of surprise, Daddy?" Lowering his voice, Daniel said, "I want to propose to Clara. I want her to officially be part of our family." Bella's whole face lit up. She threw her arms around him, whispering, "Yes, I'll help. We'll make it perfect for Mom." From that day, father and daughter began their secret preparations. Bella took charge of decorations, picking wildflowers from the meadow, drawing small handmade cards. Daniel quietly purchased a simple yet elegant ring, hiding it carefully in his drawer. One weekend evening, Daniel invited Clara and Bella to the meadow behind the house, where the sunset bathed the fields in gold. Clara thought it was just a simple picnic, but as she arrived, she saw a small table draped in white cloth, a vase of wildflowers Bella had arranged, and candles flickering softly. She stopped in her tracks. Daniel stepped forward, took Clara's hand, his eyes earnest. "Clara, since the day you came into this house, you haven't just brought laughter to Bella, you've brought light back into my heart. I thought I would live forever in loss, but you've taught me how to hope again. Clara, will you marry me?" Clara gasped, her hand trembling. Bella stood beside them, grinning wide, holding up a card scrawled with the words, "Say yes, Mom." Tears streamed down Clara's face as she nodded firmly, her voice breaking. "Yes, I will." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger, and the three embraced, laughter and tears mingling. That evening, the meadow echoed not only with the wind, but with the promise of a new beginning. 6 months later, a simple wedding was held right at the farm. There was no grandeur, no extravagance, just close friends, neighbors, and an atmosphere overflowing with love. Strings of lights hung across the yard, long tables draped in white, and wildflowers adding bursts of color. Clara wore a modest white dress, holding a small bouquet. Daniel stood in a deep blue suit, eyes fixed on the woman about to become his wife. Bella danced around in her pretty dress, both bridesmaid and the greatest joy of the day. Then came the most special moment. Bella stepped forward, clutching a microphone, her hands trembling. The crowd fell into silence, and then, from her lips, came a pure melody, the song she had practiced for weeks to gift her father and mother. Her voice was young, wavering at times, but full of feeling. Daniel and Clara held hands tightly, tears in their eyes. Every note Bella sang stitched together wounds that had bled for far too long, weaving them into a new tapestry, one of family, love, and hope. When the song ended, the wedding erupted in applause. Clara pulled Bella into her arms, whispering, "You are the greatest gift your father and I could ever have." Daniel, wrapping them both in his arms, choking out, "Our family is finally whole." That day, amidst music, laughter, and tears of joy, the Miller farm was truly reborn, not just as a house, but as a home. The following spring, joyful news came to the Miller family. Clara was pregnant. The whole house erupted in happiness. Daniel embraced her tightly, his eyes shining as if he had found the most precious treasure of his life. Bella leapt with excitement, hugging Clara and whispering, "I'm going to be a big sister." In the months that followed, Daniel and Bella cared for Clara with all their hearts. Daniel refused to let her lift anything heavy, cooking her favorite meals every night. Bella became a little assistant, bringing pillows, pouring water, even singing to her when Clara felt tired. Their home, already warm, now overflowed with love. When the day of delivery arrived, Daniel held Clara's hand tightly while Bella waited anxiously outside the room. Then came the clear cry of a newborn, announcing the arrival of new life. A tiny baby girl with soft black hair was born. They named her Jasmine, like a pure white flower. Bella was the first to hold her sister. She gazed at Jasmine with a tenderness she had never shown before. "You're so beautiful. You'll never have to grow up in silence because we'll always be here with you." Daniel wrapped his arms around all three of them, tears brimming in his eyes. Clara leaned against his shoulder, whispering, "Our family is finally complete." From that day forward, the Miller farm was no longer a place of silence, but a home filled with Jasmine's baby cries, Bella's playful laughter, and the quiet joy of two parents who had finally found peace.